Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is the sociology of race in the United States. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the sociology of race in the United States an eminent sociologist from Tennessee State University, Dr. E.K. Sanford. And of course, Dr. Sanford has been with us on a number of occasions, and each time he brings us excellent information. And Dr. Sanford, let me welcome you to the show this morning. And to tell you how delighted we are to have you here this morning to deal with this topic of the sociology of race. Now, it might sound strange to talk about the sociology of race, but I felt that as a sociologist, you have all the information, academic information, and et cetera, so that we could sort of build the show around this kind of information. And I think that will be quite informative in reference to what we're trying to do here. But before we get into that, let's have you to give audience some information in reference to your background, your education, and your experiences. I know you've been here on many occasions, and they've said it before, you've said it before, but there might be one person out there that might not know about you, that we feel that it's important for that person to know about you. So give us some information in reference to your background, your education, and your experiences.
Well, thank you so much. And as you said, I am a professor of sociology at Tennessee State University. I guess I'll start from my latest all the way up to the present. I did my postdoc at the Pennsylvania State University in Penn State, and there I dealt with the elderly, intergenerational family studies, and inequalities that exist within the elderly population of the United States. Prior to that, I was at Howard University in Washington, D.C., where I did my doctorate degree on the homeless elderly. Again, looking at race differences as well as homelessness within the United States. But while there, I had some unique experiences at working with the national headquarters of the American Red Cross in HIV/AIDS education. We were the groundbreaking organization that started the whole issue of outreach for HIV/AIDS that was funded by the Centers for Disease Control and the United States Congress. Also, while there, I worked with the D.C. Superior Court. In that capacity, we dealt with mediation within the court system. I also worked with the American Association of Black Law Enforcement Executives, dealing with incarceration rates here in the United States and victims assistance. But I did my undergraduate degree at North Carolina Central University, as well as some studies at UNC in Chapel Hill and at the Institute for Social Research at the University of Michigan.
Cool.
And then one of my specialty areas in this particular has been in race and ethnic relations, in medical sociology. And while at Howard University, they had an excellent program in Africana Studies and African American Studies, looking at a diaspora type of issue. And I did an external minor while working on a doctorate degree in that, which I think is very relevant for today's topic on looking at the sociology of race in America and how it has persisted from an earlier time to the present.
And so I think that we've got some excellent information, and you've got the best experience to really talk about the sociology of race in America. What would you say in reference to making a statement that would sort of bring into view your basic information that you're going to deliver to us today? Give us sort of a capsule of what you wish to bring to us this morning.
Absolutely. I think race, what I would like the viewing audience to understand, is a very complex issue, and it's totally ingrained in the very fabric of the American culture. And when I say culture, I'm talking about that complex whole that includes knowledge, traditions, values, and that's passed down from one generation to the next generation. So with that said, it's important to understand how race actually came about, how it was constructed here in America from 1619 to 2016. So I would like at the very outset to understand the complexity of it, because sometimes it gets so ingrained that we become so commonplace, and it becomes something that we just think that is just
Everybody
there.
know about it.
Everybody knows about it. Like a language, for an example. We were born in America, so we learned to speak the English language. And as a result of that, we were born in America, and with certain cultural traits that exist, those things are learned as well. So I think that's the point of departure of our discussion today, and to try to understand the complexity of it, because presently in 2016, we have a issue of people feeling that, well, that was back then and this is now. So I'm hoping today's discussion will bring us to bear on how we need to define it, understand some of the key terms that are very important in understanding race and racism in America, because you have to understand something before you can then understand how it's present.
Very good.
And if that understanding is misled or not understood, then we have a tendency to have a generality about it.
Very good. We're going to take a first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. And so what I'll do, I'll just introduce the show again, and you do just as you did this time, just take it on.
Okay.
And I'm over here, you know.
All right.
And I'm trying not to put any information,
That's all right.
in your audio, and but I'm over here. You just see me moving.
Oh, I understand.
Shaking my head, whatever, you know. Well, that's excellent. Yeah, that's what we want to start doing. That gives us. And I'll just introduce the show again, and then turn it over to you. Thank you, and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. E. K. Sanford from Tennessee State University, who's giving us some sociological information in reference to race in the United States. Dr. Sanford, let's see if we can pick up where we left off during that first commercial break by giving you an opportunity to further elaborate in a real sense upon some of the things that you feel to be important dealing with the issue of race in the United States.
Well, thank you very much again. Dr. Higginbotham suggests that race is fundamentally a part of social structures here within the United States. In the last segment, I mentioned about the complexity of race because it is so ingrained in the fabric from 1619 to 2016. So what does that theoretical framework mean by fundamentally a part of social structures? If we think of the 10 major institutions that make up the society, such as family, such as economics, such as education, such as medicine, such as the government and politics, entertainment, mass media, law, all of those types of characteristics that make up the society, Higginbotham would suggest was ingrained in a very racist way toward African Americans and other ethnic groups in America, and that it still persists as we think about how culture is defined as something that is passed down from one generation to the next generation to the present time here in 2016 and ahead. Now, Alex de Tocqueville, a great French philosopher, came to America maybe 150 years or so after 1619. And what he found as he was traveling in horse and buggy throughout the South, these people of African descent that were enslaved. And as he looked at the very foundations of society, he said there's no way America could ever reach a democracy. Why? Because it was founded on slavery. So therefore, when we think in terms of it being so ingrained in our society, in order for us to make improvements on it, we must just understand that that's how this particular country and society was founded. Now, many people listening would say there's plenty of evidence that race relations has changed, and they're absolutely correct. You and I can remember when school segregation was very prevalent here in the United States. Some people might be able to look at a little age difference between us, but I was in a segregated type of a situation through the 8th grade. Many of the viewing audience might remember that. So the segregation took place so we can see how there were certain improvements. We can look back at 244 years of enslavement in 1861 to 1865 with the Civil War, and after it ended, there was the Emancipation Proclamation. So 13th Amendment freed the slaves, the 14th Amendment, they gave a citizenship right, and the 15th Amendment gave the right to vote. Now, when we talk about Higginbotham's piece on it being so ingrained in the fabric, we're talking about 1866, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1865 was making the comment that people still do not have the fundamental right to vote in America. That's 100 years after the voting rights was given to slaves that were freed. So that's that notion of that. So we can see other possible improvements in race relations in America. The segregation is mentioned. We can see that we can drive any place from the East Coast to the West Coast, and if you want to get a place to live public accommodations are certainly free. You can speak and do anything that you want to, go into any store that you want to. We can even go as far as say now we actually have an African American president, and we can see representative on the Supreme Court, since that's such a topical issue. So there have been improvements. However, as we look at those improvements, we can also look at these disparities that I mentioned from my postdoc training through my PhD that are still very present, such as incarceration rates that you and I have talked about on the show many a times. Those disparities, if you look at Dr. McIntosh's piece, after slavery, that so many people of African descent were incarcerated and then sold out or given out to owners to make money. Presently, when you look at the incarceration rate, you still see a large amount and the highest percentage of African American males that are in prison. When you look back at an earlier time period in our history, you can see that people were fundamentally lynched and killed. Well, today you say, well, how does race is so much a part and ingrained in the very fabric? Good. When you see someone that may in that institution may have broken the law and someone is shot, that in the subconscious of that person, they still might shoot a person 14, 15 more times. Now, if you just think about if you go hunting and if you shoot a deer or any animal, you might shoot them one time as a good shot is done. You don't think about shooting them 15 more times. So we can see how something within the subconscious really is still present within our society as an indicator. So in sociology, we have to have a very clear definition of race. And race is fundamentally defined as viewing someone's attitudes and beliefs of someone's physical characteristics, such as skin pigmentation, hair texture, those things that are just obvious, and a notion of inferior and superior ideas about those physical characteristics. Now again, how is that so ingrained from an earlier period and still very present within our culture today? Everything from commercials to what we see in mass media, and that doesn't mean that there haven't been many improvements made, but that's how race is fundamentally seen. Now, I'd be remiss to say how sociologists and anthropologists and other social sciences has indicated to us in the literature that race has really been not so characteristics on how it's been defined and placed in our American culture, but it's a social construct. Now, what does it mean by being a social construct? That means that Historically, people have placed people into categories that really don't have any real meaning at all, such as Negroid, Caucasoid, and Mongoloid. And from that present quasi type of experiments that were done, people still have those feelings today through theory, and noted some of our primary sociologists and other social scientists out there have kind of instigated a racist type of theoretical framework that fits the social structure of America. But it's erroneous. We are much more human than the other types of characteristics, such as hair texture, skin pigmentation. Let me give one real quick example of how, if someone is from Australia, and if their DNA or their blood type matches someone in an Igbo tribe of Africa, it can be used. If there's a physical part in a human being that now in our postmodernist technological stage of living that can be transferred for someone else's parts, it can be done. So we are much more alike than we are different. But however, here in the United States, from slavery to right now, it was socially constructed that there are these differences. And that's why I started the conversation off by it becomes so ingrained in our culture that we are forced to check certain items and to say that we are this category or the next category. And we have to question to what degree does it have real meaning or just erroneous meaning.
And so what we'll do, Doctor, is to take this second commercial break, and then we'll come back and sort of round this up for the day. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
This notion of, I might cite somebody, Dr. Leary. We've talked about this before, about post-traumatic slave syndrome and those types of things.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Yeah.
I don't think I've
you never heard of that concept? Yeah, just like post-traumatic stress. You know, you have somebody that goes away. They just stay over. They do one or two tours, right? So you're talking about somebody been in hundreds of years of slavery. So why can't that type of stress be passed down? You say, just go there for 6 weeks and come back, they all messed up.
That's right, and we've been through it for life.
That's right. They take an elephant, they take him out the jungle, put him in a circus and keep them there. They wonder why they go crazy every once in a while, running on, and they think that we shouldn't have that.
Okay, well, that's good.
I'm gonna throw a little bit of that in there.
That's excellent. Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's excellent. Sociology of race. That's excellent. I'm glad we did this. It makes sense. You've got so much information. Just putting all that information.
So how do you coin it down to like segments? You need to go on and on about it. You know how we go. We go for 2 or 3 hours.
Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Dr. E.K. Sanford from Tennessee State University, and he's giving us a sociological understanding of race in the United States of America. Doctor, during this last segment, let's see if we can further elaborate upon some of the things that you've already given us dealing with race in America, and give us any kind of example that you think might further sort of enhance our knowledge in reference to what we're doing here today.
Okay, and as we said, race is a complex issue, so much so that sociologists look at overt and covert type of racism that exists within the society. Overt is the traditional one that people might say, yeah, it's so obvious that you've lent someone or you've done some other items out there that's just so glaring. During the civil rights movement, when dogs and water holes, it's just glaringly. Covert is that type of a racism that when you go in and want to make a purchase, and the interest rates happens to be a lot more higher for one group of people than another group. That brings us into the conversation that when we really want to make an intervening inroads to racism in America, that we have to understand some of the basic key terms, and everyone has to understand them. For one, we have to understand dominant group and subordinate group. That given our country and its unfolding from 1619 to 2016, that there is a dominant culture within the social structure, within family, within economics, within medicine, within law, within the government, within mass media, communication, entertainment. All of those institutions that are here in America were defined by the dominant group. Now, I know we've been talking about African Americans, but it's assumed that all other ethnic groups that come in with different cultures and languages and backgrounds have to assimilate, which is a process of understanding your own culture, but then learning all of the dominant culture's values and norms. And that's what happens within American society, and we've all done that. One of the major institutions, such as education, from first grade through high school, and then from there through higher education, has a tendency to do that. We're supposed to assimilate, which people have done. But what happens in many instances that people do not understand racism part and discrimination part, which is looking at another person based on those alleged or real physical characteristics and then acting toward that person in a certain way. And when they do that consciously or unconsciously, it happens to be racism.
Racism.
Yes. Now, another term that we have to understand, in addition to dominant group, subordinate group, is that of prejudice. Prejudice is a negative attitude or belief that one has a tendency to generalize about that other group. And they do that because of the type of culture and society that we've grown up in. And sometimes it's very unconscious. For instance, we all know about the disparities that have happened with police officers killing African Americans. I bet if we had a conversation with that police officer, he would say, some of my best friends are African American, we play basketball together, we have cookouts together.
And mean it too.
Yeah, and mean it too. But they do not understand that this thing that we are talking about today is in the subconscious. So when they get there and feel empowered and see this other person, something that's been so ingrained has a tendency to come out at that particular point in time. That's why it's very important to understand how this is so ingrained in the American ethos, in the American culture, to the point that if we don't understand the terms, then we will not understand how it's so overgeneralized. And another one, I must say very quickly, is that of stereotypes. Yes. So since prejudice is a negative attitude or belief that's generalized about a particular group, a stereotype is the over-generalization toward another group. So you can have a group of people that are in a homogeneous area, meaning all by themselves, as all one group, one ethnic group, say European Americans that live in a certain rich area or live in a place like Montana or North Dakota, South Dakota, as we're seeing today in our presidential debate that's going on. And they might have this overgeneralization about, say, having an African American president that in their subconscious make them feel, well, hey, that's enough. And that we're going to not vote and help or be an assistance way to something that's supposed to be better for everyone else in America. So that's an overgeneralization, a stereotype that you have about a person before they even show up. And so these terms are very important. Now, Dr. Leary would ask a group of people, this is to try to share, if you had a group of African Americans in the audience, let's say 400 or 500, and if you would ask the question, can African Americans or other ethnic groups be racist toward other African Americans? Social scientifically, we would say no. Why? Because race and racism is empowerment, is power. Do you own the very economics that you can then make a negative prejudice attitude towards someone or overgeneralize about them and give them mistreatment or be discriminatory? In many instances, we must make a distinction between that African Americans can be prejudiced toward each other, or another ethnic group might be prejudiced, but they cannot be racist toward another group. So that's why I'm trying to indicate today in our discussion that it's very important to understand the definition and difference between racism and prejudice. Racism is that negative attitude and belief that one is superior or inferior based on those physical characteristics, and as a result of that, you would have a stereotype or overgeneralization toward that person before you even get to know them. Prejudice is
Racism sees only the outside.
Yes.
And prejudice looks deeper on the inside. Would that be a fair characterization?
Yeah,
of
that would be. So everyone can be that way. But then one is when you act upon the other. Now, what's the sociological point? By us understanding that, you might say that I have never been around, and Dr. Gordon Allport would suggest, as you have just said, if you get to know the other group, then your prejudice starts to reduce because you start having a better insight about the other group if you've experienced what they have experienced, either educationally, that's why we fight for diversity in higher education, or going into that particular area. For instance, I was oblivious to homelessness, so I had to live among the homeless and doing my dissertation to know more about them. So if you are a part of that dominant group, you must get to know those that are in the subordinate group and understand their culture. And by understanding it, then you can at least make a very good and objective decision about what you are doing. And I think that helps us have a brighter tomorrow here in American society. But our flaw is this. From 244 years of enslavement, 81 years of Jim Crow laws, America has been in denial about that. If you look at the comparison with South Africa, they will say very clearly, we did the same thing, but we were wrong. We did wrong. We were racist toward people. We discriminated against them. We want to apologize. We want to go out now and try to have a better democracy for everyone. And so you can see that they are much more advanced. Now, President William Clinton made an effort to have a national debate on race and racism, had excellent scholars, Dr. James Jones, Dr. Jack DeBidio, and many others who headed that up. And they tried to have this national conversation, and it kind of died down. But that's one of our flaws here in America. But we have to be able to understand the terms in a correct way. We can't have misunderstanding about the terms in race because it is so complex, it is so embedded. Now, when you move into the Generation X and the millennials, this is what we were talking about when we say about race, how it's socially constructed. And with so many changes that are positive, people have a false sense of reality that is not present. And therefore, with some of the fundamental things that people need to be concentrating on, even that particular group that's being racist toward don't even believe it's in existence. So it gets very complicated and it's very complex. So therefore, we have to understand these terms and understand that these disparities based on race are in any place in health and wellness. Still, African Americans are disproportionate with all of the chronic illnesses today. When you think about income inequality, still the least paid and the least type of socioeconomic status and where people are living and the quality of life. So these disparities are very much present within our society and culture.
And so in a real sense, Doctor, it appears that there will always be race.
Yes.
And within the context that we've all talked about it, things might get better, but nevertheless, there's that subconscious that folks have in reference to race that often comes forth in spite of whoever they are or wherever they are. Would that be a correct assessment?
That's a very good assessment.
As a matter of fact, we're going to have to stop. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
Okay.
I'm the only one. So as long as you remember that, you ain't got nothing to worry about.
Okay.
Can I get a mic check from you, please?
Okay. Yes, sir.
Just count to 10 for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Good. Mr. Shakur?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
That's good.
All right.
All right.
Huh?
Well, you know, he just trying to find out something. from the
Coach
crew
had
that-
to count.
I always do. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. Let me get that straight. But that, yeah, this will be fast. We should. This is the second of 5 that we have today, so we got to be out here by 2:30. I've got to leave by 2:30. And so what we want to do during this first segment is talk about background, education, and experience. So say I'm Reverend Hayes, and I went through this and et cetera, about 2 or 3 minutes, summarize who you are. And then the same thing for you, Brother
Okay.
Cool, and that'll give you an opportunity to talk about something that you know about.
Right.
So you don't have to say anything about it, you're saying it about yourself.
Yes.
And after that, we'll end that first 6-minute segment, and then we'll break for 2 minutes and come back with that 8-minute segment. And this is where we'll get into encouraging African American youth. Some of the things that we have to do in order to encourage and make mention to the fact of all of the killings and everything that's going wrong, et cetera, et cetera. Just sociologically,
Yes.
and what they need to do and what they are not doing, and et cetera. And then we'll come back after that 8-minute segment with that 10-minute segment and deal with young gentlemen.
Okay.
See, and both y'all know how you want to run that, and some kind of things you want to say and talk about your meetings and what you're trying to do, and encouraging people to come out and et cetera. Okay? So that'll be it. Yeah. So now just watch me and don't move that chair, because when you move the chair, the camera follows you.
Okay.
So the camera follows. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is encouraging African American youth. And we're fortunate to have with us 2 persons to talk about some of the challenges that we face today dealing with not only African American youth, but our youth in general. But we are especially concerned with African American youth doing this particular show. And first of all, let's see if we can have you, Reverend Hayes and Brother Cool, to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of your experiences and what really brought you to us this morning. Let's start with you, Reverend Hayes, and then we'll continue with you, Brother Cool.
Thank you. One of the things that I've been attended Tennessee State University after graduating from the Great Pearl High School. Attended Vanderbilt Divinity School and Gammon Theological Seminary, where I obtained a Master's of Divinity degree. I also been a youth coach from the time I was like 18 years old. For many years, I coached Little League baseball. We won a lot of ball games. I also coached Little League football, and I coached the basketball team. Youth at that time at Gordon Memorial Church. So I've been in coaching for a long time as far as youth was concerned. So I've been able to put back a little bit with a lot of youth.
And so you're very familiar with some of the problems that we are talking about and some of the challenges that we have to face dealing with young people. Is that what we're saying?
It is because back when I was coaching, it was a little bit different. You could be a little bit tougher on kids. Nowadays, it's more challenging because everything is kind of up in the air. Kids are not getting the same motivation and instructions that they used to get. And so now we have to kind of take a step back and go back and try to make sure that we are giving our youth opportunities to succeed in life.
And Brother Cool, let's look at your background, your education, some of your experiences doing this particular segment.
Well, Reverend Haney, I want to thank you for having me here today. My name is Richard Coor. I'm a native Nashvilleian. I attended the public high schools here in Nashville. Went on to get my undergraduate degree from Fisk University. Did graduate study at Tennessee State. Former teacher for 40 years in Metro Public High Schools. Was head football coach at East High School, head football coach at Whites Creek High School, and I coached various other sports. And I'm very concerned about our youth today. And so that's why I'm especially happy to be here to talk about some of the issues that's happening in our community. Okay, I'm married, have one son and 2 lovely grandkids, and both of those kids attend Gower Elementary School.
Very good. You know, Brother Hayes, I think that when we talk about the activities that the two of you have been involved in, these are activities that bring you almost in intimate contact with young people.
Right.
You see, not only African American youth, but young people in general, especially talking about coaching young people, and et cetera. And so I think that within that context, we should have quite a bit of information in terms of what are some of the issues that these young people face today, and how we might be able to deal with some of these issues. Because I think that being a football coach, a baseball coach, and Brother Richard Cool, you've been all kind of coaches for many years. And I think that you bring just a wealth of information and knowledge in terms of how to deal with these young people, what we call African American youth. But I think that we all understand that all youth essentially are the same. You see, and the only reason we're talking about African American youth is simply because it appears that we have so many problems dealing with our young people. You turn on the television set every morning to get the news, and you find that there's killing and et cetera. And so that's what we're trying to do today.
There's various factors that fall into that situation where our youth is heading today, and maybe we can talk about some of those topics and help improve the young men in our communities.
Very good. And what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and then we come back with an 8-minute segment. And that will give us an opportunity to look down deep into some of the challenges that you have. I mean, some of the experiences that you've had on the playing field, in school, and et cetera, and perhaps use that as an example of how we might be able to sort of broadcast this information, knowing that nothing that we're going to say here is new.
Right.
We've all heard this before and et cetera, but nevertheless, we appreciate hearing it again. And so what we're going to do, we're going to take our first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. At 8 minutes, and we'll come back, and we're going to start with you, Brother Cool.
Okay.
And the purpose here is to talk about them.
Yeah.
I mean, what did you do with them over at East? You know, I mean,
right.
Yeah, you know the challenges.
Yeah.
I don't have to tell you what you have to deal with. You see, and so and so then after he speaks for 2 or 3 minutes in reference to it, then Brother Hayes, you come back, and then we'll go back and let each of sort of feed off one another, and then we'll move toward that last segment, and then we'll talk about young gentlemen and et cetera. So I think that's a good way to deal with that. But basically,
Excellent.
you know what to say about it. Some of the things that we have to do
Right.
in order to encourage them and whatever. I think that if we can start encouraging them to go do right and go right, and et cetera, I think
A lot.
it's a good start. So this will be a 8-minute segment. 8-minute segment here.
Seconds. Stand by.
Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Reverend Daniel Hayes and Brother Richard Coor from John Wesley United Methodist Church, we might add, because I think that both of you play significant roles in terms of your church experiences dealing with these youth and their aspirations and et cetera. And so what we'd like to do now, Brother Coor, is to have you to start us off by giving us some information in reference to what you have done over the many years in terms of dealing with young people and how some of the things that you do.
Well, first of all, I was a wellness teacher at East and Whites Creek High School, and we dealt with various type of topics about sexuality and dealing with conflict resolution and dealing with drugs and various other topics. And I've experienced firsthand how violence in our community, along with drug use, has contributed to where our young people are today. Now, there's a reason for this. Most of our students were on the low end of the socio-economical level, and a lot of times, money can put people at ease, and lack of money will want people to go out and do things illegally in order to feel good about themselves. And this is one thing that I try to teach, is that we have to be productive citizens that will contribute to society, give back to society, and not just go out there and break laws, and even though you may disagree with some of the laws, but there's certain rules and regulations, excuse me, that we have to live by. And I try to be a role model and carry myself as a head football coach and have rules and regulations for my football team, and said these rules will apply to society. Now, if you can learn to live under these rules, you should be productive as you go out and when you graduate from high school, start a family, and be a role model of your own.
Mm-hmm. And so they need some kind of guidance, somebody to lay down some rules and regulations, and you find that you can do that best within the coaching kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely need guidance. And I always tell this story. We had an athletic banquet at Whites Creek, and we had Joe Gillum Sr., he's former coach, head coach at Tennessee State University. And he came to speak with us, and he told us that we need more men to be role models to our sons. He said, women or mothers raise their daughters to be like them. They take them shopping, they teach them how to cook and do various other things. And you don't see our fathers out with the sons in the community, in the mall or going to some type of event, taking part with their sons and showing them how to be responsible, showing them that, it's okay to act this certain way. You don't have to act like your friends down the street. And so we need more men to be the role models for our youth today.
And Reverend Hayes, I understand that you've had an extensive coaching career. Not only are you involved in the ministry, but you consider yourself a coach,
Right.
in a real
Right.
sense. And so, what in terms of meeting those challenges, what do you do in terms of talking to young people?
One of the things that during my time that I was a Little League coach, baseball and football coach, I was very strict. We had a lot of rules, as Coach Core was saying, had a lot of rules, and my players had to walk by my rules. Also, I had a relationship with the parents, and a lot of parents, if the kids would miss school because I did a lot of coaching, most of my boys came from, at that time, either Preston Taylor or John Henry Hale. And if their parents had any problems with them, they would always call me. And I was able to set a lot of them straight, and a lot of them are doing a lot of good today. And so I think, as Coach said, that we have to stand up and take more of a role in our young men and young women's lives so they can be the people that we want them to be, but not just us, but that God wants them to be. And so that means we have to be tough sometimes. And we have to have some rules and some regulations to say, this is what we expect of you. And that's what I did in coaching. I expect to win. I mean, Coach Core was one of the greatest football coaches in high school. And so in Little League, I felt I was a great coach. And I was good because I didn't believe in losing. But at the same time, I believed in pushing those kids to be the best that they could be.
And so, in a real sense, they live by example. I mean, if they can see a good example, then they are more than likely to follow it. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, most definitely. You have to have a role model that people look up to. And on the way over here, I was just thinking about sometimes we look at the wrong role models, and I look at a guy like Puff Daddy, whatever his name. You see, when he goes out into the business world, he has a shirt and tie and a suit on, even though, he may put out various other type music. But you see, in order to him to be successful, he have to be a certain way. We can't live in a bubble or a vacuum. We have to reach out to various aspects of our community. You just can't live here and expect you carry yourself a certain way. There's sometimes that you can relax and let your guard down and hang out with your buddies, but when it's time to go out there and in the professional world, you have to be able to communicate and present yourself in a professional manner.
The crunch time, is that what we're talking about for the most part? There's certain things that you have to know, and certain activities and certain actions that you have to be able to take.
And you have to also be willing to go the extra mile, because kids are looking for someone to lead them. They're looking for someone to show them the right way.
Or they need someone.
Or they most definitely need someone. When people would when I was coaching Little League baseball at White City Park, and my team, I could walk off and go talk to other coaches and tell my team to sit on the hill. I knew my boys was going to sit on the hill, because if they came off the hill or they did something wrong, they knew they were going to be running about 10 laps at the next practice, because we believed in trying to teach them the right way. And that's what we have to do, go step back now and teach our kids nowadays to do things the right way so they can be all that they can be. And if we don't do it, then we're going to continue to lose our kids.
And of course, we're getting ready for this second commercial break, Brother Cool. And when we come back, we'll have an opportunity to get into a program, Reverend Hayes, I think that you have dealing with young people. And we'll be back with our audience following this short commercial break. What young gentlemen, and this is a 10-minute segment, so you take about 3 or 4 minutes to talk about that program itself, about how, its conception and et cetera. And then you sort of buy into that because you've also operated with this program and et cetera, sort of feed into what he has to say. And we'll sort of do that for the next 10 minutes. But this is your show, dealing with your particular program and how you want people to respond to that. If you want somebody, the people in the congregations or the greater community, et cetera, to become involved in it, lay out some information as to how they might be, get in touch with you and that kind of thing. And so I think that we'll do that. And so this is the young gentleman part of the program. As a matter of fact, I can remember we did a whole show on young gentlemen at one time, and that was a lot of excellent. That's the same program.
Yes.
I thought that was the same program. Yeah, just revitalized and certainly it's the same program because it's the same problem.
Right.
Yes, the same problem. So this is a young gentleman. Yeah, you can just, how you started the program and, give us a full story in reference to it, and you help him along with it, and then, so we've got 10 minutes here, back and forth here. But I think this is basically what we wanted to try to achieve with this.
30 seconds out. Stand by.
Thank you and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. The topic today is encouraging African American youth, and we're talking to Pastor Daniel Hayes and Brother Richard Core from John Wesley United Methodist Church. And of course, I think that Reverend Hayes has a program that he has developed in reference to efforts to encourage young African Americans. So let's start off with you, Brother Hayes, by having you to give us some information in reference to the conception of your program and anything that you'd like to deliver in reference to that, and Brother Cool will help develop that. One
of the things, several years ago, I looked into a program of turning boys into gentlemen. We seem to be losing that. That gentleman way, yes, and making sure that our kids know the yes ma'ams and the no sirs and thank you, and know how to dress, how to pull their clothes up, how to eat with the correct silverware and things like that. So I looked at a program that I wanted to make sure that I felt that would touch our kids' life, and it is called Young Gentlemen. And this program is to turn boys into young, not just men, but gentlemen. So they would know how to carry themselves, know how to act, and know how to respond to all things in life. And I feel that it would take them a long way. I talked with Coach Core, who is the president of the United Methodist Men at John Wesley United Methodist Church. And what better organization that can come together and embrace boys and help them to become the men that they can become. So the United Methodist Men is just excited about helping the boys in our community, and we want everyone to know it's not just about John Wesley. Anyone can bring their boys from the ages 6 to 15 to join the Young Gentleman Ministry at John Wesley. They don't have to be a member. We just want them to be part of the ministry so they can grow, and parents can see a difference in their children. They can see a difference in their young boys, and they can see how they will change in life. They won't have to worry about them wearing their pants down. They don't have to worry about them having guns all the time. They won't have to worry about them using language that is inappropriate. So those are some of the things that we want to make sure that our young men are learning. And Coach Core and the other United Methodist Men have embraced it and are doing an excellent job. And at our last meeting, our first meeting, which was last month, we had 9 men to show up, and I just thought that was great.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Brother Core.
Okay, when Pastor Hayes came to our Methodist men's meeting, and presented this proposal to us, that just got me to thinking about, back several years ago during the summer, I used to work for the Mayor's Youth Patrol and Urban League. And I got thinking about, boy, what a great way that we can teach job readiness skills, because a lot of our young people do not have those skills. Also, conflict resolutions, and just various topics that young men need to know right now. Also, building self-esteem. Positive self-esteem is one of the big things that we need to have, because if you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to go out and be able to present yourself in a successful manner. And so I said, wow, we can do this, and also teach our young people, our young men, personal hygiene, how as they grow older, they go through different type of changes throughout the body, and they have to do certain things. So all of this fits right into what we were doing with the Urban League and the Mayor's Youth Patrol, and also showing them how successful work. You build on success. If you're successful in working, you're going to be successful in life. And you have to just keep right on building. Now, if you're not successful, there's another way of doing it. You can fake it till you make it. You can pretend that you are successful. Just go ahead. Then finally, when pieces start falling together, and you say, boy, I did it. I did it the right way. You can go ahead and make it throughout life.
Each time that we talk about this as a topic, I like to raise the question in terms of educational, not only educational, but job opportunities for many of our young people, which is to say that we have a large unemployed area of young people. And do you think that it would be cost effective in a real sense for the government, either city government, national government, or whatever, to provide some kind of jobs for some of these young people?
I think that would always be great, because it teaches them as youth how to start working, and it builds a character in them that when they go out, they know that, hey, I'm becoming a man. I can work. I got to earn my way. And so, yes, it teaches them, and it embraces them to be on a workforce, not just out there doing something to make some money or to ease some money out of something else, but here they are working, earning. Here they are being respectful. Here they are saying that I am somebody and I'm doing it the right way. And it makes everybody proud when we see our kids doing it the right way, when we see them learning, when we see them earning, and when we see them saying, I can be all that I want to be and all that God wants me to be. That's what we're trying to do. And so I'm just thankful for the men at John Wesley for the effort that they're putting in this and trying to embrace our youth and want to see them become the best young men around.
Well, on dealing with jobs, it's one thing that I'm looking at is that under President Obama, he had some various policies that he wanted to get through, but because of obstruction during his presidency, he wanted to create more jobs and for the inner city infrastructure and so forth. By creating more jobs to rebuild our infrastructure and doing everything else, we'll hire more people. And also, you see that people want to cut taxes. Now, back in the 60s and 70s, we had a program called the CETA program, where various youth, if they had to fit a certain category, had summer jobs. And we got those young people from the various schools, but they don't do it anymore. And I think that's one thing that you're leading up to, is that we don't have the jobs in the black community. That's why the unemployment is very high in our community. And And I think one of the things that happened is that they said the federal government didn't have any money. I remember back at around in the mid-90s, we had a discussion with one of the teachers. I had a discussion with one of the teachers at Whites Creek. And he was complaining about paying too much taxes. And you know, taxes, some of the taxes that we use will go toward providing jobs for our young people. And I looked at him and I said, look, that's the last thing on my mind. I don't worry about paying taxes. I'm happy I have a job. Now, I know that some of these taxes that I pay is going to go back and help people who are less fortunate. So the amount of taxes I pay doesn't matter, and it's not hurting me anyway. They just thought the tax rate was too high. And so those type of things, you know, if we can go back and provide jobs for young people in all the communities, it's going to make a better place for everyone.
That's why we say it's more cost effective to provide them a job than to send them to prison.
Right.
Because if you send them to prison, you know, I think they talk about $50,000 a year to your house, a prison, et cetera, and you could take $5,000 of that money and save a youth. You see, and so, but that's what I wanted to get across today, to have the two of you talk about some of the challenges that our youth are facing and how we might be able to encourage them. And I think both of you have laid out some good programs in reference to what can be done, things that we've done prior to this time, but now it seems that it's no longer important that we do so.
Then also, we need to bring back vocation.
Okay, and let me, and I think that this is about all that we have for today. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. female population, we would, that part of us and tell us.
Can I get a mic check? Say your name.
Tanisha Gilliard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Good.
9.
Mr. Walker.
Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, Nashville, Tennessee. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I can't count any higher than that. I'll start over.
And so what we'll do, we'll have.
Is that good?
Pastor Walker.
You good, Jason? Well, he has to go off headset there. Okay.
Well, we'll have you to introduce us to, say, make some statements about Ms. Gilliard,
Okay.
Tanisha Gilliard, you see, and have her to talk about herself.
Okay.
But for the most part, after we introduce the show, we'll have you to give us some information about your background, education, and experiences, and then you tell us how you came to know Ms. Gilliard, and then that'll give her an opportunity to talk about herself, and then by that time we should be out of this first 6-minute segment. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the challenges of African American youth. You see, I think they're the same challenges that we talked about the last time you were here, and that we've talked about for the last 12 or 15 times, and that I talked about to these young people who just left. Some of the they're all challenges, but I think it gives us an opportunity to make some statements in reference to some of the problems and some of the challenges that some of our young people are having dealing with various things in society today.
Now I know you're working with Gideon's Army. Is there any other organizations that you're working with as well?
I'm also with the Justice for Jefferson Street.
Right, okay.
And Black Lives Matter Nashville.
Okay, and what else?
Yeah.
I know you're out there, wasn't you?
Yep, a little bit of everything.
Now, Ms. Gilliard, try not to move that chair.
Yeah,
you
I'm
you
sorry.
got to stay
It's
here
a
because
nervous habit.
No, the cameras will follow the chair, the movement,
okay.
and we'll get shaky results there. Okay. Now, Pastor K. Walker and Miss Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is challenges of African American youth, and we're fortunate to have with us to talk about some of the challenges faced by the young African American youth, male and female, Pastor K. Walker. I think that many of us know Pastor K. Walker. He's been with us on many, many occasions, and he's also responsible for helping to bring to this show a number of individuals with special kind of information. And I think today, Pastor, after you make some statements in reference to who you are, why don't you say something about Ms. Gilliard, and then we'll allow her, after you make some statements, to sort of round up us off by talking about herself for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll have an opportunity to start the second segment of 8 minutes and talk about some of the challenges.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, born here in Nashville, Tennessee, and of course, no stranger to comments with Dr. James Haney, been on here numerous times, just to talk about various challenges and things that in different areas, basically different topic, various topics. And I'm just glad to be here today to talk about some things concerning our youth. And of course, I got with me a young lady that's really active in doing some things and involved with various organizations, Ms. Tanisha Gilliard. And I met her through Gideon's Army, some work that she's been doing with Gideon's Army, which is a grassroots organization that advocates on behalf of the youth as well. So, and I'm glad to, to have her here to talk about some of her experiences and some of the things that she's dealing with in terms of Black Lives Matter and Justice for Jefferson Street and some of the other things that she's dealing with, as well as her work with Gideon's Army. As again, I say I'm no stranger to your show, Dr. Haney, and I'm glad to be here, and I just really want to hear from her because I know she's got a wealth of information that she can share with us.
Very good. Ms. Gilliard, why don't you give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the experiences. I think we've got about 4 minutes before this segment ends for today, and so take as much of that time as you would like to talk about your background, to give us sort of an overview in terms of who you are and how you became involved with what you're doing and some of the programs that you're working with from that perspective.
Okay. First, I want to say thank you very much for the invitation to speak on your show this morning or afternoon. My name is Tanisha Gilliard. I was born in Oceanside, California, which is in San Diego County. I got my bachelor's in cellular and molecular biology from LSU in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I am here pursuing my PhD in biomedical research. I got involved with activism, community advocacy things when I moved here to Nashville, maybe a few months after I met Rashida Fatuga with Gideon's Army. Like Pastor Walker was saying, it's a grassroots army for children where we really focus on identifying and attacking the root causes of the school to prison pipeline through restorative justice practices, both in the schools, in the communities, and in the juvenile court system. I'm involved in a lot of other community organizations like Pastor Walker alluded to, really fighting the different ways that Black youth, Black adults, our community is affected.
You know, Pastor Walker, I think we've talked about this topic on many occasions, and I think that she introduced another thing that is quite popular now and or quite infamous as far as some people are concerned, Black Lives Matter, you see, and I think that it's within that framework that we want to try to give out as much information as we possibly can today. Absolutely. In terms of what our young people must do and some of the challenges that are facing many of them and how they might be able to overcome some of these challenges.
Absolutely. Well, first, let me tag in behind what Tanisha was saying. You take a young woman that's actively pursuing her educational degrees and the like, but at the same time is taking time to deal with issues. Because I noticed when she said concerning her degrees, her field of study doesn't seem to go
lend itself
with what she's actively pursuing in terms of working with Black Lives Matter and Justice for Jefferson
Not
Street.
directly, anyway.
Okay, but not directly, but it's kind of tied in a sense. But the thing is, what's impressive to me is that the point I'm making here is that her focus is not exclusively on just getting the degrees, but at the same time, while en route to the degrees, being able to advocate on behalf of others and work on behalf of others and making a difference in the lives of others. And that's what's impressive to me, because a lot of people, they get single-sighted and that's all they're looking at. And regardless of all the things that's going on around them, they still don't veer off into it and do anything about it. So I'm impressed by that. What she's doing in her activism.
Her whole idea of social consciousness, I think, is one of the things that sort of brings us to her in a real sense. And so what we'll do, we'll take this first commercial break, and we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break.
My first time on a TV show or in a recording studio.
And so let's start off
what you're doing, what you want to do, and all this
with the second segment, Ms. Gilliard, by giving you an opportunity to talk about some of the programs that you're involved in. I think you mentioned the fact of Gideon's Army, as well as Black Lives Matter and et cetera. I don't think that many of people know that much about the Black Lives Matter movement outside of what we see on television. And so, as I think you might be the first individual that we've had on this particular program that is intimately involved with that organization. And so you want to tell we'd like for you to sort of use as much time as you'd like to use to talk about that. And we'll have 8 minutes for this segment.
Okay.
And so you'll start us off with this segment by talking about 3 or 4 minutes, and then Pastor Walker will make some statements feeding on what you have to say, and then back to you, and so we'll go through this for 8 minutes, and then we'll have a commercial break. Okay?
Sounds good. I don't know if I can take up a full 3 or 4 minutes,
Oh
but
yeah,
I'll try.
Yeah, you just talk. You talk with all those
I'll try.
all those degrees that you have and all that studying that you do.
30 seconds.
Yeah, we're not going to let you get out of that. Just talk about yourself.
Yeah, I have a hard time
Yes,
doing
sir.
that.
Way from California. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. We're talking to Pastor K. Walker and Ms. Gilliard in reference to some of the challenges of African American youth, both male and female. And I think, as we often mention, Ms. Gilliard, we might say African American youth, but we know that some of the things that we're talking about here applies to all ethnic groups and et cetera. And the reason we're talking about African Americans here is because we want to highlight that specific part of the population. I think you mentioned the fact that you're involved with the program Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
Many of our audience might not be familiar with this organization from their perspective. So why don't you take a few minutes to talk about how that organization started and some of the things that that organization has been involved in and some of the things that you're doing in reference to that organization.
Okay. So Black Lives Matter as a network originally it started after the non-indictment of George Zimmerman in the Trayvon Martin murder. It started off just basically as a hashtag, Black Lives Matter, in terms of social media and the news and things like that. But it really took off after the murder of Michael Brown in Ferguson with all of those protests. And there was a freedom ride kind of put together in the fashion of the freedom rides during the civil rights movement, where people from all over the country and even Canada came down to Ferguson to help the community to stage some more protests and kind of get the conversation going about the things that led up to all of this increase in police